What is the price of mirror magic? Can you use magic to make good things happen? Should you? And finally, how do you stop spelling banana? Welcome to Mythic Mirror, a podcast for fans of myth and fantasy who want to live a magical, fulfilling life. I'm your host and fantasy author, Mary C. Kehoe.
And I'm your co-host, Carolina Carter.
And we are continuing talking about Witches Abroad today. So, Carolina, what was your just one quick favorite moment that jumps out at you?
Oh, sorry, I was so set on this other thing. I really need to talk to you about how uncomfortable Greebo makes me feel as a character. I was so ready to jump into that. I'm
All right,
sorry.
we'll jump in with that.
I love the character of Greebo, but I would be lying if I said he didn't make me feel deeply uncomfortable, especially in the form of a human. I was reading the book like with one eye open. It's just like, please don't let anything untoward happen.
Especially since you spend the whole book with him as a cat, so you know him. But as a cat, all of these traits of what he is, his entire being makes sense. And then as a human, you're like, oh no, this is a lot. What's gonna happen?
I know. And he goes to meet what's her name in the garden. I was like, oh no. I cannot read this. This isn't one of those books. Getting hot just thinking about it. Not hot in a good way, hot in like an uncomfy, blushing kind of. Anyway. But as for a favorite moment, I guess my favorite moment is we've talked about Magrat and how she's a little small furry creature. And in the second half of the book, she discovers that she is a mongoose. And that's my favorite.
Let's talk about that. I have that question here later, so we can jump to that, talk about it now. Does Magrat find herself?
She does.
In what way? How is she a mongoose?
She faces unspeakable fear and strikes out at it and discovers that while she may be a small furry creature, she is a mongoose.
Kapow. And she learns about what it means to be a witch. Through the first 2/3 of the book, she has this growing resentment about how the two older witches don't actually ever do any magic. And then not only does she see them do magic, and she sees Granny face off with Lilith and Mrs. Goggle, but she learns the importance of when to use magic and how, which this is part of the end of the book, but when Granny is talking to Mrs. Gogol and she says, you can't use magic to make things right. You can just stop them from being wrong. And why can't you use magic to make it right? And you see with Lilith the whole time, that's what she's been trying to do. And when the witches are going through all of the different stories that Lilith has left in her wake, and Granny says, you can't use magic to make happy endings, just endings. Which I think you see, I don't know, I felt it the most with the wolf in the Red Riding Hood story of just so like a piteous being of this not human but not wolf caught in the middle. There's so many stories about werewolves, but I've never seen that character in a book of this wolf that thinks it's a human but can't be, but it can't go back to being a wolf, and it's trapped and it's begging the witch to end it.
That was really sad.
And Granny's looking at the woodcutter coming in, and she goes, of course there has to be a happy ending. Just oof, that got me.
Terrible.
Yeah.
I was genuinely very sad That part was heartbreaking. For a very funny book, it did have a moment where you're just, that is sad.
Yeah. And it takes this being that before that, in the scene of, it's coming and scuffling at the door and getting inside and standing up and walking like a human. So he creates this
Yeah.
scary being, and it's tying into the human brain of what freaks us out. This wolf is
Yeah.
standing up and opening the door, and something trying to get in from the outside, and then totally turns it, and it's one of those moments of compassion. You just feel
Yeah.
horrible for this being, and you realize just how evil Lilith is in her carelessness. She created
Mm-hmm.
this 2 years ago or however many years ago and then just left it because it
Yeah.
didn't matter to her anymore.
Right. And that's making good endings.
Right. Yeah, that's just a sacrifice toward her good ending. And she thinks she's the good one.
Yes, that she's turned Genua into sort of this fairy tale factory where these fairy tales are going over and over again and just happy ending, happy ending, happy ending, but nobody has any free will. The two absolutes that she holds in the highest regard is beauty and order, which is very interesting because beauty and truth is, like, I feel like a widely accepted, like, that those are the two things you should be striving for in life. And when you just twist that a little into beauty and order, you get this ugly evil that masquerades as order and beauty.
Well, and it's interesting because you have order that is just naturally a part of the cosmos, which includes the chaotic,
Mm-hmm.
where you have, I can't remember if we talked about this in another episode, but where you have the nautilus shell and Fibonacci sequence and all, and
Right.
how math is creates nature, and yet nature looks so haphazard, but there's an order to it, just like Terry Pratchett's writing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you try to make it your human order, when you try to make it the happy ending that you have in mind, that's when it becomes evil.
Right. Which is interesting because I feel like her view of the world would be that free will is what's wrong with the world,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, to argue, be the devil's advocate, I could argue that, but it's also the only thing that makes life worth living.
Right. Because you can't grow if you don't have free will. And what's the point of
Mm-hmm.
being if you're not transforming into something?
Right. Hmm. Deep thoughts, Mary.
Yeah. Well, you said something and it made me think of something, and now I can't remember. Yeah, one of the things she keeps repeating is how people just don't know how to play their part.
Mm-hmm. Which is extra interesting with her as a character because she's fractured herself into so many parts, kind of like a Horcrux. I feel like her standing between the mirrors and many, many mirrors in order to achieve this order, in order to achieve this beauty, she's fractured herself. And I was just sitting with that and thinking about what that meant and how, like, these, what reflections have, or don't have rather, is any weight. They don't bear
Mm.
consequence. They're never present. And they're just reflections, and the never being present, I guess, is what I thought of. How spoiler free are we going? Spoiler light?
No, go ahead. You can say whatever, I think.
Spoiler heavy. When she ultimately is trapped in the mirror world and Death says she can get out if she can find the real one, and she can't because she's never been present within herself. She's fractured herself. I shouldn't say never, but she's fractured herself across the mirrorverse, and truly is lost. Cannot find herself. And mirroring that, when Granny Weatherwax is asked the same question, she says, "Is this a trick question?" Death says, "No." She goes, "This one," and she's out, which I loved.
Yeah, there's the whole subplot or theme, I guess, of self and finding yourself. You've got Magrat in the beginning with reading all this, the self help and mystical books of how to find yourself, and you have Granny throughout the whole thing just so herself and her beingness, and in the end that's what gets her out. She never had a question of who she was. And this actually, I was thinking about this. I was talking to a friend of mine before starting this book, talking about finding the most innate part of yourself and what that is, and how to frame your life around that piece that makes you who you are. And my friend calls it the bones of your soul, which I really like. Shout out to Eleanor and her mullein and moss.
Yes.
I thought it was most poetic, but that's what Granny Weatherwax has, and that's what keeps her. She's so mad at Lilith, her sister, for making her the good one, but it's like that. Her deeply practical goodness that doesn't have any room for niceness, but is just so itself, is the very strength that makes her win every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how can we find what our innate beingness is? That's the quest.
Beingness. I wasn't beingness. Beingness.
Beingness, the beingness. I don't know.
I get it now. The first time you said it, I was thinking more of like B-sides, like A-sides and B-sides.
Oh.
Our beingness. I was like the software program we're running in the background, the beingness.
Nope.
Anyway, I
Much
get what
less
you're saying now,
technical.
and I could not agree more.
We'll just go with the bones of your soul. It's way better
The
than
bones
beingness
of
anyway.
your soul. I like it. I like them both.
Yeah.
May we take this moment to tell people what our Discworld delight from last week was, and do a Discworld delight moment now?
Yes.
It seemed like a natural stopping point.
Well, yes. So last week, did we have? I don't know if we had any correct guesses because you didn't ask me.
Let me read them. Well, I had a bit of a week myself. I am in pain, and I don't handle pain at all.
Well,
It's not that I don't handle it well. I just don't handle it. So here are our guesses. Thief of time, thief of time, thief of time, thief of time, thief of time. Mary, was it thief of time?
Indeed, it was.
Wow.
Thief of time. Man,
Excellent
these guys
guesses.
are good.
I know. It's kind of outrageous. One even said thief of time. Dana Clemens says thief of time where Lobsang is talking to Susan.
And she would be correct. All right. For this week's Discworld Delight, here we go. They spread out without speaking. Some of them had drawn their swords. They weren't laughing and joking now. They were watchful. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
What's going on in that one, then?
Is that part of the quote?
No.
Oh.
That was me.
I like it. I was like, an unexpected turn. Just what I expect out of Terry Pratchett. I assumed it said dun dun dun. And then what's going on in that one? Nope. That's just us.
Now back to it.
Yes, back to it. I have something else I need to talk about with you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about Nanny Ogg and how she's really the unsung hero of this book, because you have the villain, Lilith, standing on her own, trying to make the world bend to her will. And kind of the other pillar over here is Granny Weatherwax, who also is just like I'm going to do it on my own. I stand on my own. I go against things head on. And not in the middle, but in the mix is Nanny Og, who is she knows stories. She lives and breathes stories. She sings songs. She drinks in taverns. She makes friends. She's the web builder. She's the connector. She's like truly holding it all together, but not like the weight of the world's on her shoulders, just like that she's just weaving life along. And, she's the one who connects them with their allies once they get to the city, just because she's herself and she goes out and she meets a friend.
Yeah.
And I love that character so much.
I don't know who Granny would be without Nanny Og. Both of them
Maybe
together.
bad.
Maybe bad. No.
No.
She definitely wouldn't be happy.
No.
I did love when they first get to the city that morning where each of the three goes. Nanny Og finds the cook and becomes friends. And then Granny sees a beheading. And that one,
Right.
the way that's written is great, where she thinks he's going to lose his hand because he's a thief. And then she hears a noise and looks back at the stage and knows why the citizens of Genoa are so quiet and clean. And
yeah.
and that she had heard of other places where they chop off a hand of a thief to keep him from doing it again, and in Genoa they chop off his head so he didn't think of stealing again. And she knew where the witches were in Genoa. They were in charge.
And poor Magrat goes and almost gets herself in trouble. Always.
Always.
Little Magrat.
Yeah. The little wet hen.
The little wet hen. Yeah, the beheading and the wolf part were the two parts where you're like, a bit like the Brothers Grimm and fairy tales. You're like, there is a very dark underbelly to this very funny book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how life is, and that's how fairy tales are.
Yeah. Yeah, and then at the end, when they're about to be, they're in the midst of facing down Lilith, and Mrs. Gogol comes with Baron Saturday, and then Granny has to confront her as well, because this also isn't right. She's watching, it seems like, oh, great, they've won. They've scared Lilith away. And Mrs. Gogol is leading Embers up the steps. And Granny's standing there going, no, this isn't right. And, now we'll just have Mrs. Gogol in charge. And Nanny is like, well, she's not too bad. And Granny says she's not too bad in the swamp. And I love this line, that magic is too important to be used for ruling people with. Then she has to face her down and tell her no.
Yes, and that, first of all, another use of mirrors where she reflects her belief back to her, where Madame Gogol is using the voodoo doll against her. And because she knows that her belief in that is so strong, Granny
knows that Mrs. Gogol's belief in it is so strong.
Right. Sticks her arm into a flaming torch, and the voodoo doll, it lights on fire and burns Madame Gogol. And it's A, a cunning use of reflection and headology, and B, a fascinating look at belief and the way not only it shapes us, but also can be used against us. And maybe sometimes that's good, maybe sometimes that's bad, but it's just that, so I guess that if you believe it, it is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this book's interesting because you see so many different ways of doing magic. You've got Lilith with her mirror magic. You've got Madame Gogol in the swamp using the swamp and all of that magic. And then you've got the witches with their version and seeing them and how they interplay off of each other, and how Granny is so smart and she understands everyone else so well that she can use the way they do magic and morphs hers by just by using their magic or their belief And going back to Lilith with the mirror magic, I think one of the lines that sets it up for the end when she can't get out, when she's trapped in that mirror space, is when she's discussing it with the duck about mirror magic and why it's so powerful, and that you don't have to depend on anyone, and that when you're using mirrors, it's all just yourself that you're using, and in the end the only one you answer to is your own soul. And it
Mm.
talks about how when the mirror, it stretches on for infinity and there's nothing but you, and then it says, but it was wrong. Infinity holds many things, including hunger. And so it's this, that idea that her soul, she's taking for granted this soul, and slowly it's getting weakened and diffused through all these reflections and mirror space, till she's lost the aspect of what makes her her. It's lost
Right.
in all the reflections.
Yeah, and to weave it all together is Lilith, Granny Weatherwax, and Nanny Og, and each way they interact with stories. Lilith using them to gain more power and beauty and force an ending. Granny Weatherwax facing them head on and trying to subvert them. And then Nanny Og, who kind of knows them so well that she can just laugh at them, and that when they are laughed at, they lose their power.
And her willow reinforced hat.
Right. And her willow reinforced hat. Very important.
That can stand anything a farmhouse throws at it.
Right. Right.
And Magrat, who doesn't realize she's in a story.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, we do have our bookshop.org lists up and running. There's 2 lists. One we've called Mythic Kith, which is all of the book recommendations from our subscribers and listeners and viewers. So if you'd like to add more books to that list, let us know in the comments, and we will put all the books in the list so we can all find them and read great books together. And then the other list is Mythic Mirror, which is all the books that we reference and feature or happen to mention, and books that we love. So you can find that in the link in the show notes below. And if you're enjoying this podcast, share it with someone. Give us a thumbs up and or 5 stars. All right, I've done that bit.
You did great. You did so great I could kiss you.
Oh, kiss.
Mary, I'm quite remiss. I have not asked you what your favorite parts from the book were.
There are so many. One of them that just really got me is when they are traveling down the river through the mountains, and it's misty and dark and cold, and they hear something following them, and they're quiet and listening, and this creature comes up to him paddling along on a tree, and it's creepy, and he comes up and he reminded me of Gollum, and he says, "It's my birthday." And there's this moment of silence. And then Granny Weatherwax takes the oar and whacks him in the head into the water. And I loved it because it's like when absolute creepiness meets Granny Weatherwax, what happens? And she is unfazed.
And not having it.
Yeah, that one looked like a troublemaker.
Yeah.
And Nanny not missing a beat. It's the slimy ones you have to look out for.
Yes.
And then at the end, on a more philosophical note, when Magrat is asking about Mrs. Gogol and was she good or bad with all the raising dead people and alligators and stuff, and Granny says something along the lines of, good and bad, it's hard to know. It's hard to know with people. I guess what matters is what way you're facing. And that is maybe what I will end on is it matters which way you're facing, because none of us are perfect. We just have to be going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my takeaway would be I would be an expansion on that it's not about the ending, it's how you get there. And that to be aware that the way you are getting there is riding on the stories that you're telling yourself.
And not to try to control the ending. Don't try to make
Mm-hmm.
it happy for someone else. Just make sure you're facing the right way.
Right.
All right, for sparks this week, what was your spark?
My spark this week is as it's dipped in temperature quite a bit. I've been spending a lot of time by the fire reading with the cats.
Oh, I need to go build myself a fireplace. One moment.
Yeah, you do. They just come over.
All right. My spark is I have ducks. So in the morning, I go outside and let them out and feed them and everything. And that has been getting me outside in the morning. And it's been really cool just to see the different mornings and earlier than I would usually be outside. And it's just always so beautiful. And it's different each morning, but always beautiful. Thank you for chatting with us this week. And next week, we will be starting City of Brass, which, if you don't have, you can find on our list. And it will be supporting independent bookstores and us. And you can get my free book at maryckehoe.com. We are so grateful to be spiraling through this universe with you. It's not always easy, but no good story ever is.